Live from the TV30 studio, here is Jim Schneider.
Well, hi, and welcome to inFocus. We're thankful that you joined us tonight for our broadcast. Ladies and gentlemen, it was 6 months ago that Israel was attacked. Israel was attacked by an enemy that had vowed to wipe her off the face of the earth. Israel was attacked by a group of individuals that launched an attack that was very brutal. It was an attack that was very barbaric. It was an attack that targeted unborn children in the womb all the way up to the elderly as well that were killed. The atrocities, very much horrendous. It was an attack that was launched by Hamas, an Islamic terror group. Hostages yet taken, or a number of hostages taken, include U.S. citizens, Israelis as well, that continue to be under the clutches of Hamas. Israel's prime minister, very determined to win this war against Hamas, and is also determined to wipe Hamas off the face of the earth. Joining us here in discussion, we welcome back Dr. Richard Schmidt. He is the founder of Prophecy Focus Ministries, pastor of Union Grove Baptist Church, Union Grove, Wisconsin. He is a speaker on the weekly TV program Prophecy Focus, the radio broadcast Prophecy Unfolding. Spent some 32 years in law enforcement and becoming active sheriff, after which he retired. He has authored several books, Are You Going to a Better Place? Also Daniel's Gap, Paul's Mystery, Tribulation to Triumph, The Olivet Discourse, Globalism, The Great World Consumption, and Artificial Intelligence, Transhumanism, and the De-Evolution of Democracy. And Pastor Schmidt, good to have you back.
Well, good to have you with me once again, because I just so enjoy when we get together. Our chats are always great and get a lot of information out.
There is a lot of information to unfold here this evening, and we are now at the 1.5 year mark since Hamas launched this very deadly, brutal, barbaric attack against Israel. Some have called it Israel's 9/11. Give us your perspective on what's unfolded on that day up to the present here.
Well, one of the things and you mentioned law enforcement that I've been in, and one of the things that we always say, and of course the military always states as well, is we will never forget. When you have something as tragic as what took place in Israel, when you have this horrible terrorist group, Hamas, on October 7th, break down the barriers, kill soldiers, come in, dismantle a lot of the electronic systems that Israel had set up. They were so well prepared. They knew exactly what they were doing, and they came in with an absolutely horrible, nefarious plan, which is to kill innocent Jewish people. We cannot forget that 1,200 Israeli individuals, Jewish people, were slaughtered, they were butchered, they were maimed, they had unspeakable things that were done to their ladies and children, and we cannot forget this.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, and it's just brutal. I mean, sexual assaults, the cutting off of even organs, body organs, was part of their assault and then part of the atrocities that took place, and many things we're not going to go into detail this evening, but I don't, you compare this to Hitler's, the Nazi Germany and the atrocities in killing Jews, and we understand this is the largest attack, the largest death of Jews since the Holocaust.
Right, it's absolutely mind-boggling. You go back to when Hitler did his thing and slaughtered 6 million innocent Jewish people, just the hatred. And one thing I like to keep in mind, because we always look at things from a biblical perspective, why are these things taking place? Well, you look at the satanic Luciferian, if you will, concept that Lucifer, Satan, the devil, all synonymous terms, hate the Jewish people, that he hates God, and he's been doing everything possible to dismantle God's perfect biblical plan by eliminating the Jews. The one thing we do know is he's going to fail.
Okay, and we'll be unfolding that more here this evening as well. I'd like to share a statement that came out from Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu yesterday as he marked the 6-month anniversary. He said, quote, "We are marking today 6 months of war. The achievements of the war are great. We eliminated 19 out of the 24 Hamas battalions, including senior commanders. We killed, wounded, or captured a significant number of Hamas terrorists. We cleared Shifa as well as many other terrorist headquarters. We destroyed rocket manufacturing plants, war rooms, weapons, and ammunition caches. And we continue to systematically destroy the underground tunnels. We are a step away from victory."
Well, this is still a pretty big step. And there's still a great amount of Hamas individuals that are in, as we know, in the Rafah area, the southern part of Gaza. But think about this, too. We get their statistics, the things that have happened, and we have to be reminded of what Gaza has been doing to Israel. During this wartime, since October 7th, 12,000 rockets have been fired into Israeli territory. 9,000 of those rockets came directly out of Gaza. 3,000 of those came from the north, from Hezbollah, which, of course, they've not been named as part of the war partner, but they obviously are. So when you look at this massive amount of artillery that's been coming at Israel, there's a great reason why Israel has to respond the way they are. They're not at a danger yet, and by any stretch of the imagination.
Seeing the advancement that the Prime Minister has made as far as the Israeli Defense Forces are concerned, he's not playing games. They've made some significant strides, and one thing that perhaps has been a learning mechanism for the Prime Minister as well as the world is this complex tunnel system that Hamas has had.
Yeah, and I mean, we've watched in many places you can find the video clips of tunnels being blown up. But I mean, it's just, even Israel, they had no idea at the beginning, and they still, I think, are uncovering new avenues, new tunnel systems that exist. So when you look at of course, the Palestinian state, about 33,000 Palestinians have been killed. When you think about the number of how many Hamas soldiers there are, and nobody knows how many of that 33,000, if that number is correct, what percentage of that is actually Hamas terrorists.
Some are saying that's quite inflated.
Right. So you have no idea what the true numbers are. But when this war started, it was, if you will, speculated there's at least 50,000 Hamas terrorists in Gaza. Even if every single terrorist, 33,000, was an actual terrorist, and that number is correct, that still means you've got at least 40 to 50% of the terrorists are still running around. They're going to get reorganized just like they've done, just like they did when they came back into a couple of the hospitals that the Israelis had literally eliminated the terrorists from. They're going to rebuild if they don't stop it.
Yeah, and certainly this is something that the Prime Minister has mentioned that is a reason why he doesn't not want to see a prolonged ceasefire to take place, because of the fact that Hamas will regroup, they will rebuild, and store up resources to come at them again. But yesterday, it was announced that a key division is pulling out from the southern Gaza Strip, from the IDF. What's going on?
All right, so in Khan Yunis, which is, if you look at Rafah being at the southern end, Khan Yunis is kind of the big province just north of that. Well, the Israeli Defense Forces had some significant victory there. They've wiped out a great percentage of the Hamas terrorists, and apparently Benjamin Netanyahu, along with his staff, if you will, the military experts, determined it's time to pull out now because they need to regroup. So just like Hamas is going to get an opportunity while Israel, if you will, is pulling out for a bit, Benjamin Netanyahu made no excuse about it. He was very point blank. We need to regroup. We need to get our troops 100% ready because we are going into Rafah.
Okay, and but we should also point out that Hamas, and we keep hearing the civilian casualties, and the media does a great job at pointing this out, but Hamas is been utilizing human shields, and by that they've been putting their assets into schools. They've been putting them into hospitals. I mean, we see Shifa Hospital, there have been many terrorists that have been apprehended or killed in hospitals.
Absolutely, and bringing up Al-Shifa Hospital, that was a major second movement that went in there in recent past weeks. IDF went in, basically cleaned it out, got rid of the Hamas individuals there, and while they're going through the hospital, they're uncovering weapons, stash of weapons, right inside rooms and places where allegedly the sick were supposed to be. They went down into the terror tunnels that were connected literally to the hospital, and they're uncovering all sorts of weaponry and different tunnels that have been used. So yes, they make the Palestinians, specifically the Hamas terrorists, make no exceptions. They will use anything and every methodology, no matter how ridiculous, and hiding behind, if you will, the skirts of ladies, hiding behind the hospitals, hiding behind schools. They're open game to do whatever it is to try and keep themselves from getting hurt.
And again, I think it's important we put out the information as to who put Hamas into power, into governance in the territory there.
Right, absolutely. So the citizens of Gaza voted in Hamas over a decade ago. That's the group they want ruling in their we'll just call it a country for now, even though that's a stretch. So that territory, that 25-mile-long territory,
it belongs to Israel.
It truly is Israel's. If you look at Genesis chapter 15 and you go through the boundaries of Israel, technically it's Israel's land. Well, obviously that's going to remain disputed until the King of Kings, Jesus Christ, comes back and literally gives them the land.
Sure.
But it is Israel's land, and unfortunately now, in my opinion, Israel kind of made a bit of a mistake when they allowed them to take that land. It's cost them.
Okay, so they put in their own authority, and that has been Hamas. And so Hamas has been plotting. They've been building tunnels, a very elaborate tunnel system. Now we even discovered tunnels that have been going into Israel itself.
Absolutely. And I think we're going to see, as this war progresses, and if things keep going at least at the same pace they have been, I think we're going to be finding a whole lot of tunnels from different areas as well, not just out of Gaza, but up north, and we've seen a lot of work.
Judea, Samaria, and near Syria as well?
Absolutely. So when we're talking Judea, Samaria, most people will recognize that as what the Palestinians call the West Bank, which is actually the east bank of, if you will, Judea and Samaria, which is part of Israel. So the tunnel structures are amazing. We know from recent things, Iran, Iraq, Lebanon, Syria, Gaza, all these places, they like their tunnels.
Well, you just mentioned the I word, Iran, and Iran has been kind of the silent partner, so to speak, in all of this, but their fingerprints are just everywhere, and Iran basically has been saying, hey, there's nothing to see here. But I want to show a clip. This is a video clip of the former Israeli Prime Minister, Naftali Bennett, and he had some things to say in regard to Iran. Let's watch that clip.
The former Prime Minister of Israel, Naftali Bennett. Welcome. Pleasure to have you on the show, at this table. Let's start with Iran, because it does seem to be a major escalation. What do you think was behind it? Because it feels as though Israel has enough on its hands right now, trying to deal with how to conclude this war, what to do in Gaza. What do you think motivated this strike?
Well, obviously, I can't comment on the strike itself. What I can say is Iran is an octopus of terror. Its head is in Tehran, and then it sends its tentacles all around Israel and the Middle East. In Lebanon, they have Hezbollah. In Gaza, they have Islamic Jihad and a bit of Hamas, the Houthis, all around. And they've been pounding Israel using their arms, while their head was sort of immune. So the age of immunity for Iran's head is over. It doesn't make sense to keep on fighting just the tips of the fingertips of these arms while letting Iran itself get away from it.
So there we have. That was just from a couple days ago. This audio, this video here. He called it Iran an octopus of terror, with the head being in Tehran.
Well, that's probably a really good analogy, because we look at the head. What does the head do? Well, all the tentacles that are coming out of that particular head, if you will, that octopus, the head basically is thinking. It's telling its tentacles what they need to do. So what we're seeing, the United States government basically has come out as recently as today talking about that they really don't think that Iran itself is going to intervene on behalf of, if you will, Gaza or anyone else, but they are going to use, as was just stated, and I think it's a very good analogy, Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthis, maybe other different groups that they have, that other terrorist groups, other proxies, if you will, of Iran. The big head doesn't want to get hit, and they don't want a nuclear bomb coming their way. I know earlier on a program that you do with Crosstalk, you talked about EMPs, or electromagnetic pulses, that, I mean, you could take down Iran, and they don't want that. So let the minions do the work, and let's keep my own country safe.
But them being the head, and I think it's a really good analogy that they've given, as you mentioned, but a tentacle coming up through Gaza. From Hamas, another tentacle coming down from the north, Syria, Lebanon, and Hezbollah there, tentacles coming from the Palestinian Authority. I mean, Iran is really all over this.
And there's no doubt about it. And Of course, me and you, we have to rely on open source material, government reports, and so forth. But nobody is making any noise, if you will, saying, no, that's not true, it can't be this. But it's so all the intelligence, all the Israeli intelligence, the United States intelligence, other partners that we have, all are saying Iran is the head of this octopus. So, and one we left out in the south, the Houthis. So you've got the Houthis in the south, Hamas on the west side, you've got Hezbollah on the north side. And then, of course, you got Iran and Iraq and all the other, just to be straightforward, Muslim nations that are surrounding Israel, all part of the problem.
So there was a reported Israeli strike in Damascus with a couple of Iranian generals taken out.
Yeah, there were. And Iran was very upset with that, and they made it known they were very upset. Well, why would Iran all of a sudden make that statement? Well, they basically postured. There's a whole lot of what actually Jimmy DeYoung Sr. used to call saber rattling. In other words, we're making a lot of noise up in Iran. But again, as recently as today, Iran in all likelihood is going to be using other proxies to attempt to attack Israel. I still find it, and this is one thing that I'm still in shock over. The Israeli Air Force has been bombing, and rockets have been coming in, but there's been no air, if you will, fight at all within Israel. Are they going to keep with the same methodology? Are they going to try and change it up? It's a big issue, of course, for the Israel Defense Force and their leadership.
And we saw Iron Dome just coming from a ship of Israel's as well to protect an incoming missile here just recently.
Right, and of course most people now are familiar with the Iron Dome. It's basically anti-ballistic missile system. Some people actually think it's like a dome somehow, but it's not. It's rockets that are being fired. Again, 12,000 rockets have been aimed at Israel, and the greater portion of those have been taken out by the anti-ballistic missiles called the Iron Dome.
Dr. Richard Schmidt is our guest here tonight in inFocus, and we're taking a look at this attack on Israel. Now, 6 months later, and Israel has been responding to this and has been making progress rooting out the evil Hamas. Starting at the northern part of Gaza, making its way toward the south. We'll be talking more about that here momentarily. But talking about Iran, we saw also, in light of the two Iranian officers being taken out, that commanders, that a senior Iranian official said yesterday that none of Israel's embassies are safe any longer. Matter of fact, this past Friday, Israel actually closed 28 embassies.
Yeah, so I mean, this is nothing new. Middle East or other, especially third world countries where you have embassies, what takes place? Well, the folks get upset, the governments get upset, the people get upset, and all of a sudden you have a major incursion, if you will, upon the embassies. So obviously Israel's taking this dead serious. They're getting threats from everyone, and of course the United States isn't making any threats, but you just see the amount of noise that there is, the media noise, the people that are protesting. That's here in America where, quite frankly, the kind of things you see in the Middle East rarely, if ever, happen to that degree. So these other countries where they have no problems picking up arms and attacking an embassy, the Israelis have a great reason to be concerned about their foreign embassies.
Now, the legacy media has no problem attacking Israel whatsoever in all of this. When innocent Israelis are killed, maybe it's going to be mentioned, but it dies away very quickly. Yet, when there are issues with Israel, and let's mention the death of the World Central kitchen workers, Israel says it was a mistake, but your comment on what transpired there?
Well, again, my heart breaks when you hear anyone that dies that's an innocent, that's been trying to help others. It's tragic, and we have to all agree, I think, that, yeah, it's tragic that unfortunately these people were killed. The other thing, though, is it's a war. You've got to understand in a wartime, unfortunately, and there's, what can you do about it? It's going to happen. Now, am I making an excuse for an error? Of course not. Nobody wants to make an excuse. The two top officials that were involved in that strike on the 7 individuals, I mean, the Israeli Defense Force took them out of service. So they take it serious, and I think that's a good thing to do when someone does make that type of a serious mistake. But on the other hand, we've got to remember, if you want to go into a war zone, there's a good chance that you're not coming out.
Yeah, and there's still a lot of unanswered questions about that as well, because the intelligence was indicating there were people with rifles that were part of this and getting into some of the vehicles, and I don't know that we know the full story at this point.
And I used to work for, many folks know over the years, Sheriff David Clark. And the one thing he taught me before he retired from the sheriff's office, he said, Rich, the first news that comes in is always what's called the first facts, and the majority of those are wrong.
Yeah, so true, as we see stories develop over time. Well, as I mentioned, in the atrocities against Israel have been many, and Dr. Phil recently conducted a program in which he had the son of Hamas, Mossab Hassan Yosef, up against a couple of Palestinian women. And I'm wanting to just play a clip from this, and we'll have you comment on this as well. He knows exactly firsthand what is Hamas, and he, by son of Hamas, his father is one of the co-founders of Hamas. But listen in to this interview that was recently with Dr. Phil.
I've read it that the charter of Hamas is to eliminate the Jewish race, beginning with Israel, but not stopping with Israel, wiping them off the face of the earth. Is that true?
This is true, but it does not end there. Now we have the problem of the pro-Palestine, who are actually giving Hamas cover. They are participants in the crime. In fact, since October 7, I personally don't differentiate between Hamas and what's so-called Palestinians, because actually there is no Palestinians. There are tribes. There is the tribe of Hamas, and there is the tribe of the Islamic Jihad, and there is the tribe of Khalil, and there is the tribe of Nablus, and each one has different interests, and all of them are conflicted. If they did not have Israel as the common enemy, they would kill each other. This is the reality of what's so-called Palestine. You don't know what Palestine is. Actually, in fact, the keffiyeh that you are wearing, this is just a statement to show that you really lack the authenticity to represent the case. And what's so-called the cause, you know, this is a human problem.
So you just...
The cause must die. I think enough is enough. And now it's proven, and you are helping Hamas to prove it to the world, that Palestine depends on the destruction of the state of Israel. And this is not acceptable, and we are not going to agree to it. And I tell you something, for the next 10 or 20 years, the Palestinian people will pay the bill that Hamas is caused today, and most likely in blood.
To you, Hamas and Palestinians are the same, they're one and the same?
After October 7, yes, there is no difference.
Really?
The vast majority of the Palestinian people support Hamas.
Really?
This is a fact. This is proven by statistics, and your silence now. You cannot even condemn Hamas and say that what they did on October 7 was an act of a savage group. You don't have that power.
Said I condemn.
On what authority do you speak?
question.
You only speak on the authority of Hamas propaganda.
No, why do you say that I'm speaking on the authority of Hamas propaganda?
Because if you were a decent human being, you can say that the thousands were killed on October 7. That was a crime against humanity. It was a genocide.
Pastor.
Wow.
Yes.
Son of Hamas. He knows what he's talking about. He's been there. He understands the culture. He understands the movement of the, and let's just go back to we got to go back to the religious piece here. This is not a war like we would think, well, we're trying to get power, we're trying to get a land. This is a religious war. And I think he spelled it out perfectly well. And he's pointing out exactly what, and quite frankly, it's what I've been saying for decades when dealing with Homeland Security and so forth, that when you get involved with a terrorist organization, if you understand what the Quran states, if you understand that it looks at the Jewish people and Christians as infidels that need to be wiped out, that's not a political statement. That is a strong religious statement. And just like me and you, we believe that Jesus Christ is the only way to get to heaven. That's nothing to do with, if you will, a political statement. That's our religious belief. By the way, one that we won't kill over like the Palestinians will. But what he's saying there makes perfect sense. And if you're part of the Islamic culture, if you believe the religious literature as being divine from their God, he's saying exactly what has to happen.
He was equating Hamas with the Palestinians, as we hear about them today. And she seemed to take issue with that, but would not condemn the actions of Hamas, what they did against Israel. Instead, she condemned the question that was being asked.
Right. It's amazing. And, of course, I don't know who this lady is. I don't know if she did not have an accent at all, so I don't know who she is and how she's aligned with, if you will, the Palestinian people, if she has bloodline or otherwise. But, again, I point out exactly what you just did. They cannot state what an atrocity is. And if your religion teaches that it's an appropriate thing to wipe out the infidels, the Jewish people, in other words, we've heard this statement so many times, the little Satan is Israel, the big Satan is America. That's part of their doctrine, if you will. That's what they truly believe. So again, let me just qualify one thing. I will love the Palestinian people, the Arab people, the Muslim people, but I will never, ever subscribe to their doctrine, if you will. But as a Christian, we'll still try to reach them for Christ. But if they choose violence, if they choose death, that's on them.
Yeah. Let's talk about Rafah. I mean, this is believed to be a stronghold for Hamas right now.
Absolutely. So, again, the big issue was there were 2.3 million Palestinians that basically filled up that 25-mile space of Gaza. The IDF made it very clear during the beginning phases of the war, if you don't want to get killed in the north, you don't want to get killed in the middle part of the war, you better go south.
Move south, yeah.
So the majority of people they displaced, they went down to the south in Rafah. Well, of course, now the big issue is the humanitarian side of things. 1.3 minimum million people are down in Rafah right now. And the United States government, others are just putting a massive amount of pressure on the IDF. Don't go in there because we don't want innocent civilians being killed. So again, part of, I believe, the maneuvers that the IDF are doing right now is giving the citizens down in the Rafah that don't want to be part of the fight, start getting out of that area because they are going to come in. So the hostages, probably a good number, a massive number of Hamas terrorists are down there. If Israel's going to win the war and wipe out this terrorist group Hamas, they've got to get into Rafah.
Okay, and where do these people go? Do they go back north? I mean, that's a lot of devastation there. We understand there's been some talks again with Egypt or Jordan or something who have been resistant to allowing refugees to come through.
Right, well, there's numerous different plans that have been put out there. The United States has been asked, along with others, build a tent city so we can start moving people out. We're all aware that America, I mean, our taxpayer dollars are being looked at to bring humanitarian aid in off of the Mediterranean Sea, if you will. So, I mean, there's a whole lot of different countries, and ours being one of the major ones, that are investing a massive amount of money to try and, if you will, keep the civilian casualties to a minimum.
And how much of that humanitarian aid is being hijacked by Hamas?
Well, that's another thing. That's the unknown secret. Now, today, according to news reports, it was the largest shipment of humanitarian aid since October 7th. It actually took place today. Over 400 trucks, I believe it was like 419 trucks of aid got put in there. But what we've also seen on the news media, that is the conservative media outlets, not the mainstream media, a lot has been happening. These trucks come in and all of a sudden we got a riot going on, and Hamas has been taking over some of these humanitarian trucks. Some of these things are being basically put away where the citizens can't get at them. So again, we have to rely on the mainstream media, but it appears that a lot of this help that's being sent and that's being paid for is being overtaken, as you said, by Hamas.
Now, the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, has also said, I've got a date, and a date that we are going to launch attack into Rafah.
Right. Well, I think it's very smart of Benjamin Netanyahu not to announce what that date is. Now, as you have pointed out many times over the months that this has taken place, Israel bends over backwards to make sure that the Gazans know here's where we're coming next. Text messages, flyers, announcements made public through the mainstream media and so forth. They've laid out their war plans so many times, which quite frankly, you really don't want to do, but they've done it anyway to try and mitigate, if you will, a lot of the humanitarian problems.
Has the U.S. ever done that? I mean, when we went after Saddam Hussein, did we announce by text messages to the people, put out flyers, we're coming?
Well, quite frankly, that's military insanity to do that type of a thing. So of course not. But this is a case where the pressure is so hard on Israel. And we got to be honest here. America does invest billions of dollars into Israel. So they're using their political power, if you will, to try and persuade the Jewish people, or specifically the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, as to the kind of what they want, because they do have some serious money in the game.
We're told that there's been some pretty tough conversations between the Biden administration and the Prime Minister of Israel.
Yes, and again, we go off what the reports state, and the White House often will put out at least part of what the conversations are. But the president himself, President Biden, has made very clear that you're going to cross a red line, there could be consequences. Now, what are those consequences? And of course, the Vice President, Kamala Harris, was asked that question. Nobody's willing to state what that means. Is it saber rattling? Is it have any meat to it? We just have to wait and see, because we don't know.
But we do know that there's great pressure and being told for a ceasefire once again. And yet we know, as we've discussed previous, this is just but a regrouping time for Hamas.
Absolutely. And again, all this is so current. Things are happening today as we speak. The United States gave a plan to Hamas as to how to basically get a ceasefire and get some hostages out. Hamas rejected the terms. They wanted, Hamas has been trying to get 100-to-1 type things. We come up with a little something and they come up with a massive change. So again, the United States is not Israel. The Prime Minister, quite frankly, it's got to be his decision. Can our president have some influence? Of course he can, but Israel has to stand, and they have to make their decision.
Some have been so strong to indicate that Israel, or that the United States, is actually betraying Israel. They've used that term. The U.S. delegation, for instance, did not stand up at the United Nations when a recent vote happened there. What's your perspective on this?
And this is, again, it's tough. And how's it tough? Because it's all politics. So when you're an elected official, and in America, our president is obviously an elected official, he is trying to do the best he can during an election year to appease the Palestinian folks as well as the Jewish people. So he was very pro-Israel on October 7th. He was very strong about, Israel needs to go in, they need to take care of business, they need to wipe out Hamas and do what they need to do. Well, I don't think the president or anyone else maybe in the upper echelon of his particular party thought there was going to be so much pushback from the Muslim community in America. Now he's in a tough spot. What do you do, Mr. President? Because you've got the Palestinian folks, those that are supporting Palestine, you have the Jewish folks, you have the Christian community, which is supporting Israel for the most part. Now you've got to decide which line you're going to cross and which one you're not. Okay,
and on that topic, here's a press release that just came out from CAIR, the Council on American Islamic Relations, and here's the headline: 80 Muslim, Palestinian, and allied groups call on President Biden to reverse course on Gaza now, in a letter to the White House. This was dated on April the 3rd. And it mentions here at the top, the Council on American Islamic Relations, the nation's largest Muslim civil rights and advocacy organization, today joined 80 advocacy Muslims, Palestinian, and allied organizations representing communities across the U.S. to send a letter to President Biden that objects to his recent decisions to both transfer more deadly weapons to the Israeli government and falsely, this is their words, falsely certify that the Israeli government's war on Gaza complies with the U.S. law. Signatories, at the bottom of the page, they talk about major Muslim Arab Palestinian allied groups, Muslim Americans for Palestine, the Council on American Islamic Relations, engaged, Hindus for Human Rights, and they mentioned the Mosque Cares, the Ministry of Iman, W.D. Muhammad, Muslim American Society, Muslim Ummah of North America, Change Power, U.S. Council of Muslim Organizations, the list goes on.
And it's amazing. Now, what's very interesting, and when you look at the dynamic across our country, the amount of mosques that have been built, the amount of if you will, meeting places for the Muslims has exponentially increased. You have massive groups of Muslim people that, of course, we know about Minnesota, Michigan, other major states that have massive populations of Muslim people. They know exactly what they're doing. The other thing, which we try to hide our heads in the sand on, is the amount of dissidents, the amount of jihadists, the amount of terrorists that are coming through our borders. And we're just allowing it to happen. It's absolute insanity what our country has been allowing to happen. And I don't know how in the world the American public can keep in office people that are supporting this kind of nonsense. It is putting every single America in serious danger as we speak.
Yeah, and it was, 19 terrorists that brought about 9/11 here in our country?
Right.
This past Friday was International Quds Day. It was a day to support Palestine and to oppose Israel's war against Hamas. But in Dearborn, Michigan, a district represented by Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, it's been dubbed America's Jihad Capital. And we're going to show a couple clips. This is provided by the Middle East Media Research Institute. The first clip is of an activist from Dearborn, Michigan, Tarek Bazi. And friends, you're going to hear them yelling, "Death to America," coming through here. And yes, indeed, this is on American soil, but let's go to the clip.
Gaza has shown the entire world why these protests are so anti-America. Because it's the United States government that provides the funds for all of the atrocities that we just heard about. And this is why Imam Khomeini, who declared the International Day of Quds, this is why he would say to pour all of your chants and all of your shouts upon the head of America. Malcolm X said, and I quote, "We live in one of the rottenest countries that has ever existed on this earth. It's not Genocide Joe that has to go. It's the entire system that has to go. Any system that would allow such atrocities and such devilry to happen and would support it, such a system does not deserve to exist on God's earth." And so when these fools ask us if Israel has the right to exist, the chant "Death to Israel" has become the most logical chant shouted across the world today.
So that's a clip from this past week.
I sit stunned, as I hope everyone else watching that clip is stunned by the rhetoric that was being used. Folks, there's nothing civil, there's nothing that fits our culture, if you will, our society, that was done on that clip that shouldn't make us outraged by what this individual is saying.
This is on American soil, death to America.
It's amazing, and it's amazing that we allow that kind of rhetoric to take place. Talk about, I mean, everybody has been having this meltdown regarding what allegedly happened on January 6th, which really amounted to something nowhere near like what has taken place here. This is the kind of thing, it's treasonous, it's against America, and even if people are pro-Israel, how in the world in our own country can a person like that be allowed to chant this kind of violent rhetoric? It's an absolute violation of our First Amendment rights and what our founding fathers said. You don't have a right to go and to cause this type of violent rhetoric. Now, we're stuck with it, and we know our government isn't going to do probably a whole lot about it. That's where we're at today.
You know, I hear him, and he quotes Malcolm X and talk about how rotten this country is. You know, there's a way to get out. You can board a flight and go to, the country of your choice. And but this, leave this country. If it is so horrible, so rotten, leave this country.
Yeah, which that's not their intent. Let's be real honest about this. their intent is to take over America, not to leave it. So when they're getting their troops, if you will, their jihadists put together, their terrorists put together, this is a statement. Now, whether we want to agree to it or not tonight, here's the statement. America gets in our way, we'll take it out.
Yeah.
That's their statement.
And the other thing that he pointed out in this clip here is the objection to being asked, does Israel have the right to exist? And that's when he said, so our response to that question, a legitimate response is death to Israel.
Right. So they make their plan very well known. It's not changed. It's nothing new. It's been around since the Quran was written. So these things that are taking place, and this is what is so aggravating. We have known about this as a country, that this stuff was coming in. Homeland Security's known about it. The administrations, various administrations that have been in the presidency know about it, yet we do nothing.
Yeah, and President Trump was criticized for for stopping, holding the gates closed to those coming from Islamic terrorist countries into the United States. There's one other clip I want to play from this event that happened in Dearborn, Michigan last week, and this is an imam, Usama Abdul Ghani, and I want you to watch this clip, friends, and hear exactly what this imam said. This was shortly after the activists speaking there as well.
Imam Khomeini recognized that Israel is an evil settler colonialist project. He realized it is a cancer, and he established this day. Israel, before this, brothers and sisters, was a sacred cow. Nobody could criticize Israel. Everybody was terrified of being anti-Semitic. Everybody was afraid of them. But now, the people of conscience very openly will criticize Israel. They recognize Israel for what it is. Israel is ISIS. They are Nazis. They are fascists. They are racist. The people of the world now know this.
Dr. Schmidt?
Well, first of all, he needs to get his rhetoric correct. When he calls Israel ISIS, they must have redefined what ISIS is, because it's basically the Islamic State. So again, it's rhetoric, it's nonsense, it's inciting people to basically violence and to go against Israel and certainly the American people. So again, we've allowed this rhetoric, this violent rhetoric, this jihadist rhetoric, the terrorist rhetoric to continue, and America will not take a stand. We need new leadership.
He also called Israel Nazis who exterminated 6 million Jews.
Yeah, isn't it amazing that Hamas is the one that killed 1,200 innocent people? You're going to go out, you're going to literally attack a country, you better be expecting there's going to be repercussions. This is not an aggressive move on behalf of Israel. It was an aggressive move on behalf of the terrorist group Hamas. Israel is simply trying to wipe out what took place.
Friends, we'd like to open our phone lines tonight to take your questions or brief comments. Our phone number 414-935-3030. Yes, tonight's program is marking the 6th anniversary of when this atrocity, this barbaric attack against Israel was conducted by Hamas. Our phone number 414-935-3030. Toll free, it's 800-733-8830. And if you'd like to text in your question or brief comment, send us your first name and the city that you're texting from to 414-439-3585. That's 414-439-3585. Friends, we encourage your calls here this evening, 414-935-3030. So, Pastor Schmidt, you had Prophecy Focus Ministries. What's the big picture? What's going on here?
Well, again, let's get down to the biblical perspective. Why are all these things happening? Number one, I'm not surprised at all by them. It infuriates me, but I'm just shocked it's happening at this particular point in time. But what is it all headed to? Well, one thing we know that during the next major prophetic event called the 7-year tribulation, Israel is indeed going to be attacked very severely. In fact, we know from Zechariah chapter 13, verses 8 and 9, that 2/3 of all Jewish people will be killed during the tribulation period. That's many more than were killed during the Holocaust based on the current numbers. So we see these things happening. The caution, though, is we can't just say, oh, well, we know it's going to happen prophetically, so we should just let it go. We're still here. We should still be active. We should still be writing redresses, if you will, to the government based on our First Amendment rights, asking to protect our country, not allow some of the things that you showed tonight to take place. We've got to protect our citizenry and those that don't embrace the Islamic world.
So the big picture is that this sentiment against Israel is going to increase. Anti-Israel sentiment is going to increase.
Yeah.
Will they be successful?
Well, they will be successful to a certain degree. So again, we go back to Matthew chapter 24, Luke 21, Mark 13, talks about there'll be a massive incursion that will take place on Israel. We go to Ezekiel 38 and 39. All the Islamic nations, makes it very clear, it states who they are going to come up against Israel. But here's the good news. Ezekiel 38 and 39 make it very clear. God's going to wipe out those soldiers that come up over the hills to attack Israel. So is it going to happen? Are we surprised by the rhetoric? No, because it's setting up for the prophetic scenario.
We've got Fran calling in from Milwaukee. Hi, Fran, you're on the air.
Yes, I had a question. I was watching BCY and I saw a...
Go ahead, Fran. Listen to your phone, please. Fran, please go ahead.
Oh.
You're on the air. Okay, you said you were watching VCY and what?
And I saw one of the people from VCY speaking about a woman by the name of Christine Cleveland. And she supposedly wrote a book about God is a black woman. I'm wondering if...
No, that was not seen on I mean, we don't have that kind of program. What is your question pertaining to Israel or Bible prophecy this evening?
Well, I want to know if... Well, I'm trying to turn loose the TV.
Yeah, you should your volume. There's delays, so listen to me on your phone.
Okay, I was wondering, do they really believe Israel is at fault, or the Palestinian, or the Hamas people? Are the Palestinian Hamas the same?
Are Palestinian and Hamas the same? Who's really at fault in all of this? Okay, thank you, Fran.
All right, so and maybe she's going back to the clip that was shown where the person, the son of Hamas, was making it clear, if you were a part of Hamas, the Palestinians are in support of what they're doing. And he was very correct. If you look at the statistics in America and other places, there is a massive amount of support among the Palestinians for what took place in Gaza. Of course, there's going to be a segment that's not. But I think from the son of Hamas's mouth himself, I'm just going to go with what he said, because I think he's right. If you're part of the Islamic religion, and if you're supporting the Quran, and if you're supporting the leadership, it's all going to be pro, if you will, Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis, and other terrorist groups.
Yeah, indeed. And friends, let me just say this. Just a few weeks from tonight, we will be having Usama Dakdak with us on this program. And he will, I mean, he has translated the Quran into English, but one of the things you'll find is all the verses there, you know, take Jews and Christians basically as your enemy. They are the infidel, and strike the necks, that is, decapitate the infidel. So that is the tenet of Islam itself.
Unfortunately, that is true.
We've got Paul calling from Kenosha. Paul, you're on the air.
Yes. Hamas gets their recruits from the Palestinians. Palestinians can't even exit into Egypt. Egypt doesn't want them. Syria, Iraq don't want them. Nobody wants the Palestinians. That's the problem. And Hamas is getting all their recruits from the Palestinians, and the Palestinians are the brothers, the fathers, the mothers, the cousins, aunts, uncles of Hamas. They're all in it together.
Okay, thanks for the comment and the response.
Yeah, and interesting the way that was phrased. Here's the major issue. We have Shiite Muslims versus Sunni Muslims. And what Hamas did was they went against, if you will, one of the groups, took a leadership role instead of basically coming up with a plan with the other one. So Hamas has been kind of pushed off to the side. However, though, in basically agreement with what he said. They're all now, they can't allow Israel to keep on going the way it is. They can't allow them to keep going as strong as they are. So even those now Islamic groups that are different sect, if you will, than the ones in Gaza, they're trying to align with them to support them, to say, listen, we've got to do whatever it takes to wipe out Israel.
Let's get to a text here. Alan, South Milwaukee. They can shout death to America. Trump scrutinized a loving Christian, scrutinized for pro-life protest. Our current government is trying to bring down America. So talking about, I'm guessing probably January 6th in there and other matters as well. But quite a, one is trying to uplift America, another one calling for death to America.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're in a very, very big world of hurt right now. And again, I have a very difficult time based on Romans 13 trying to state what I really want to state. But our current administration is not doing any favors to the American people. It's not supporting what they know is right. October 7th, they knew what was right. The administration knew. Why all of a sudden do we have this change? It's all because of politics.
We have Andrew calling from Milwaukee. Andrew, you're on the air.
Yeah, thank you for taking my call. Yeah, I agree with everything you guys are saying regarding the war over there in Israel. One comment I have is that why don't the good Palestinians team up with the Israelis to defeat Hamas? That would be a good solution. I understand that. But my question is, regarding the Nazi movement, it was a horrible thing what happened during World War II, and it was a good thing that we defeated the Nazis, the Allies did. But there seems to be a growing Nazi sympathization regarding the conservative movement. It seems like there's a lot of rhetoric on the conservative right praising Hitler and praising what his ideals were and everything. Like regarding the guys who drive hundreds of miles with their AR-15s to urban places to kill as many black and brown people as they possibly can.
And that's something that is not happening, Andrew. That is something that is not taking place, and you're carrying things to an extreme for whatever your intended purpose is with that. But I will say this, that it is a Christian right that will denounce Nazism.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, I'll have you comment, but this coming Thursday on radio, on Crosstalk, we're going to be interviewing Dr. Erwin Lutzer on his book, When a Nation Forgets God. And he looks at lessons from Nazi Germany and how we're heading toward that. And he's got stern warnings for that very aspect.
Yeah, well, let's make it very clear when there are movements out there that are trying to push Christians into being, quote unquote, American nationalists.
Yeah.
The Nazi group, the white supremacists. Listen, folks, I'm a pastor, I'm a preacher, I have prophecy focus. I mean, we're out there constantly. We're on the media tonight.
Yeah.
We are not white supremacists. We are not pro-Nazi. We are not what is being termed these white supremacist nationalists. We have nothing to do with them. I denounce it. President Trump denounced it. It's totally separate, has nothing to do with pro-Christian American men.
Let's get to another text. John from Mount Falls. Can you please expound on where the Palestinians came from through biblical history and how it ties into current events in Israel?
Well, do we have an hour? Very quickly, if you go to Genesis chapter 10, we have the start of certain, if you will, Semitic individuals. Then we go to to Jacob and Esau. Esau then comes up with some of the Semitic people. You have Ishmael and Isaac, where Ishmael becomes, if you will, Saudi Arabia and all these other different places. So there's really, it's a very involved process, if you will, to get the entire picture. But there's three main passages that you can go to at least to get the basics.
Okay. We've got Laura calling from Milwaukee. Laura, you're on the air.
Yes, I would like to ask, would they be able to take those humanitarian trucks to northern Gaza and encourage the people from Gaza to start going that route?
Okay, thank you, Laura.
Yeah, well, what's actually happening is there's airdrops that have been taking place as well as the trucks that are coming in. So, and there was a little faux-pas. In fact, you mentioned it before on a program that actually some of these supplies coming out of the air actually had killed some folks accidentally. Another tragic outcome. But supplies are getting, I believe, to at least a good portion of the country. Is it like me and you have here in America? Of course not, but the supplies are coming in.
Thank you for the call. We're going to squeeze one last call in. This is Kelly in Mayville. Kelly, you're on the air.
Hi, I'd just like to say that, well, actually the Palestinian people and the Palestinian government is teaching their children to hate Jews and Christians, and sometimes they say one thing in their language and one thing in the English language to try and hide it from people, but they've been found out. So that's my comment.
Thank you, Kelly, for raising that issue. And indeed, that is very much the charter of Hamas calls for the eradication of Israel.
Absolutely. And I've seen so many video clips of young boys, young teenage boys, as well as, I mean, we're talking 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds that are being trained by their parents and groups to, if you will, hate the Jewish people, hate the Christian community, hate America, and it's part of the culture. I mean, it's a horrible thing that's happening, but is it true? 100%. It's documented.
Let me get one last text in, and this is from Rory. How can we best make our voice heard so our government will listen?
Yeah, again, we have to go right back to the Constitution. Go back to your First Amendment rights. You have the right to peaceably assemble and state what you believe. The First Amendment makes it very clear. You write the government officials. You let them know what's on your heart and mind. I mean, if we had a real truth, how many people that are listening tonight have actually called up their congressmen, their senators, and made their voice known? Folks, if we don't do it, we're not going to have an impact. So just like here on inFocus, on Crosstalk, on VCY America, this is being pushed out the best we can with a small venue, so to speak, compared to the mass media. Let your voice be known. Get out there, write your people, take a stand. Don't be afraid to talk about it.
And as Bill Federer did a speaking tour on the topic, silence equals consent. Our voice does need to be heard on these issues. Let's get out to, you have a couple of websites. You pastor Union Grove Baptist Church, so give us a website for Union Grove Baptist Church.
Yeah, I think the simplest thing, if you go and put in Union Grove Baptist Church in Wisconsin, it'll come up in your browser. Okay. You can go to it. Prophecy Focus Ministry, same thing. It's prophecyfocusministries.com. They can certainly go there and see what we're doing. So, and again, anytime I encourage folks to do this, go to vcy.tv. We have our program, Prophecy Focus, on there, several hundred shows with many other wonderful things.
Watch them on demand, many different topics.
Right.
vcy.tv. Appreciate your being with us here tonight. 30 seconds we have left. What would you like to leave with our viewers?
All right, so the final thing, let's get down to the basics. Jesus Christ has Christians on this earth to seek and to save the unsaved, folks. 2 Corinthians chapter 5, verse 8 says, "Know you not, Christian, that we are to be his ambassadors for Christ." So there's only one hope for America, there's only one hope for this world, and that is the gospel of Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ came into this world to save sinners. We're all sinners. We all have a penalty laying over our heads, which is we deserve hell. But Christ died for our sins. We need to get that message out. We need to let people know that Jesus loves them. God does save Muslims today.
Amen. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
And friends, thank you for joining us on inFocus. Good night.